I've wanted one for years, but finally, I have a Super Famicom and a nice box for it. Yes, it's the Japanese Super Nintendo, and for £55 from eBay, I got everything. Except the RGB SCART cable from Retro Gaming Cables and the FX PAK Pro, which was once called the ST to SNES. Altogether, I've spent £130 in total, and it was absolutely worth it. The games I've played, discovered and enjoyed are limitless. However, today I wanted to see how Composite fared against RGB SCART for the Super Famicom. Composite would have been the main cable for this console in the 1990s. Will RGB SCART provide a big upgrade? To find out, both cables were used with my RetroTink 5X at 1920 by 1440. This is to make sure we're getting the maximum sharpness out of both outputs. I tried a variety of games as Super Nintendo games didn't all output at exactly the same resolution. Let's begin. Let's start with Super Robot Wars Gaiden for the Super Famicom. This 1996 title was English patched in later years, allowing me to play it properly. I love the Super Robot Wars games. It makes me happy whenever I see another game in the series get the English treatment. This was the final game in the series to be released on the Super Famicom, making it a good test for image quality. You're currently seeing it using composite cables and it doesn't look too bad. Don't get me wrong, the pitfalls of composite are on show, but it's not as blurry as I expected. On a CRT television, I imagined this would look pretty sweet. What happens if we switch to RGB SCART cables? The improvements are clear but not as transformative as I expected. I've done composite against RGB SCART many times in the past, but here, I was expecting more. Don't get me wrong, I love the sharper, cleaner picture, and RGB SCART absolutely looks nice on the Super Famicom. It's just compared to doing the same test for say 5th or 6th generation consoles, I'm surprised it's not the clear difference I expected. Let me know if you agree with me in the comments. Here's another Japanese-only Super Famicom game, The King of Rally. I didn't play too much of it, just enough to get an idea about how the game works and looks graphically. The actual graphics aren't amazing, even for Super Nintendo standards. If I quickly show Composite and RGB SCART, the RGB is clearer and easier to discern details, but it's all a pixelated mess all the same. Good job Mode 7. However, this screen where you can upgrade the vehicle has good detail and artwork, allowing me to better show the differences between the two cables. With them side by side, it's much easier to tell the differences in the graphical fidelity. Which one looks more appealing to you? Here's Front Mission for the Super Famicom. I'm playing an English patched version of the game. This turn-based strategy game looks pretty cool, and I enjoy seeing the mechs fighting one another in these battle animation scenes. Using Composite, you can see most of the details fairly well, even if the composite quirks try to distract you otherwise. What can RGB do? It's definitely cleaner and sharper, but again, not the improvement I expected. I'm not sure if the graphics themselves, or the resolution output of the Super Famicom is the reason, but whatever the case, each game I've tested so far hasn't shown massive changes in the video output. Compared to, say, the PlayStation 2 as you see here, you can understand my reaction. This is good news if you wanted to use a CRT television. It'll look incredible there, even with composite video. Let's try Star Fox 2, a Super FX 2 chip game. Using a 3D game, I wonder now if we'll see a much bigger difference in the video output. I do find it slightly harder to see the image, although the image size being so small doesn't help. I guess it was done to help the Super Famicom as its CPU isn't the strongest. The composite video is still acceptable for a game that didn't see a release until the SNES Classic came along. Switching to RGB SCART, it's much clearer and I found it easier to play the game. The quality of the visuals also makes it much easier to see details, and although the polygons are flat shaded, they age better and have a certain quality about them that I enjoy seeing. This might be one of the games on the Super Famicom where the difference between composite and RGB SCART is much easier to distinguish. How about Samurai Spirits next? This is a port of the Neo Geo original and it actually plays well on the console. It's fast, frenetic and responsive. Using composite, the image looks smeary, more than most of the games I've tested so far. The game is played in a small window, further blurring the image quality. It's not awful, especially on a CRT television, but it seems the quality of the image is game dependent, which makes sense. Switching to RGB SCART, the video quality gets a nice boost. The colours pop, the image is sharp and full of clarity, and despite the small image window, the game is clear as day. I enjoyed the graphics, and being able to see every single detail was a nice bonus. I wonder what you folks think. Do you agree with me? Here's Tales of Phantasia. It's yet another Japanese exclusive game for the platform. This is an RPG game. I love the visuals here, plus the detail and animation is awesome for a 1995 late release Super Famicom title. Again, this is an English patched version of the game. Going back and forth between composite and RGB SCART, the game really benefits from the increased clarity offered by RGB. Composite gets the job done, but I did appreciate the boost from RGB SCART. The colours especially pop here. It's pretty clear that you can get away with composite on a lot of Super Famicom titles, but RGB at times can make a significant difference in certain games. Here's Castlevania Dracula X. I know the PC Engine CD version of this title is so much better than the Super Nintendo port, but hear me out. It's still a good title, and it looks pretty nice, all things considered. Composite video doesn't look too bad here, although I can definitely say RGB improves both the colours and the detail. Look at this part from the beginning. RGB does a better job of not mushing the graphics into one another, they look more separate using RGB. This continues throughout the game, although again I must stress, on a CRT television, Composite would shine there and likely wouldn't have the problems that I'm showing you here. Right, I tested a few more games on the Super Famicom to see how they fare when using Composite or RGB SCART cables. I hope you enjoyed the montage, and I will see you at the end. I really enjoyed using the Super Famicom in the setup I currently have for it, and seeing how the console handled its output using Composite or RGB SCART was a surprising experience for me. Unlike the consoles I normally test, the Super Famicom results were not what I expected. Composite, although still one of the weaker cable outputs, fares quite well on the console. It's sharp enough and not excessively blurry compared to what I've experienced with, say, the PlayStation 2 for example. For CRT users, this is great news. You don't need to upgrade the cable to get the best experience out of the system, although, as always, if you can run SCART, RGB would still see a nice improvement. The funny thing to me is the cost of the cables if you wanted RGB or S-Video. To upgrade to a good S-Video or RGB SCART cable for the Super Famicom is not cheap, and I mean it. Normally, S-Video would be cheaper, yet not so much here in the UK. Ultimately, RGB SCART is worth it for the Super Famicom, and I have no regrets getting mine. If you are using a CRT TV especially, Composite is still a good choice, and you will be happy with it. What did you folks think of the two different cables used for the Super Famicom? Which one would you use in your setup? Tell me in the comments, and I will see you soon.